Hi, everybody. Today's Sunday, May 10th, 2026, and our dear friend, our brother, Stanislav Krapivnik is here with us. Welcome back, Stas.
Thank you. Happy 9th of May, even if it's the 10th of May.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
it's and
it's still the
yeah,
weekend.
yeah. Happy Victory Day to everyone. And Stas, let me start with what we've learned moments ago before coming to this live. We've learned that Iran responded to American proposal. We don't know what is in that response, but what we've heard so far from Wall Street Journal, they reported that Iran has refused American demands to dismantle its nuclear facilities. And it's this, I think this was expected from the Iranian part. And not only they're not going to stop enriching uranium on Iranian soil, but they're not going to give their enriched uranium to the United States. We know that because I talk with Iranian people and the people who are important in the government, and they're not going to give it to the United States. But the other point is right now, Donald Trump has changed his mindset just moments ago, said, the war is not over. We are 70% in, and we need more 30%, and we may need 2 more weeks of war. He's basically talking about going to China and getting back, then starting the new round of war. While considering what's going on in the United States, the latest poll shows YouGov polls that 62% of Americans believe that the United States lost the war in Iran, and only 13% say that the United States won the war. Right now, Ostas, what is going on with Donald Trump and 70% of the war? What does it mean for the future of the war?
It means that the Trump coins that you bought, I'm talking to the mega crowd, that's the 13% I think they won. Go check the value of them. They're down 94%. From their peak. These are the people. I mean, look, you're not going to get reality through these morons. These are hardcore mega uh, androids. These are the people that half of them can barely pay their bills, but they want to be part of Trump's team, and they bought um Trump coins that then was used as leverage to get real money. And then those Trump coins went down from their peak 94%. So, I mean, it's that's the people that hurrah, we're a great country because we can bomb somebody. We don't know who the hell we're bombing. We can't find them on a map. I'm not quite sure what a map is, because and then it's got letters on there, and you got to read that. So that's kind of uninteresting. Um, that's the type of people you're dealing with right there. The 70%, 80%, 90%, 1,000,000%, 1 quadrillion%. What the hell does it matter? Trump's clueless, first of all, on what the actual situation. There was actually Vance. There was a falling out, reported falling out between Vance and Hegseth, because Vance he got the inkling, and a very right inkling, that that Hegseth is just and his people are just bullshitting Trump on what's going on. You know, if you're the president of the United States and your entire brief on the first month of the war was watching 2 to 3 minutes of things blowing up, seriously? I mean, seriously? That's the brief? That's the friggin' brief to the commander in chief of one of the warring parties on how his war is going? Look, there's a birdie. Look, it blew up. And of course, it's only the Americans blowing stuff up. You're not seeing the American stuff blowing up. I mean, this is, I don't know how to describe this. In a modern environment, this is, it's criminal negligence at this point. If the only thing that Trump knows about what was going on was 2 3 minute blow up videos, you might as well go watch some Iranian Lego videos. You'd have a better idea. They're better briefed than the crap that he's getting. I mean, this is insane. This is absolutely, I mean, Biden might have gotten something along the line, but Biden's brain dead, for all it matters, unless they pump him up full of amphetamines and coke to get him to do speeches, which he did pretty well when he was wired. But I mean, and Trump's apparently not brain dead. I mean, I think there's obvious signs of dementia, at least early stage dementia. But I mean, I don't know how to describe that. A 2 3 minute blow up videos, and that's what they were running. So 70%, 80%, 90%. Remember, they were 10% to the end of the Ukrainian war a year ago. You know, if 90% of your climb is a flat plane and the other 10% is Mount Everest, yeah, you might not make that last 10%. So, you know, if you can agree on, let's all sign put our names on this document. Okay, we got that. That's 10%. Well, we agree on in this room. Yes, we'll agree that. And then the rest of the text, we don't like each other. You know, we can't agree on anything. Yeah, I don't know how they count this. This is just, Trump just making crap up for the public. And I think you're quite right. The majority of public is realizing, especially if they're watching anything or reading anything on Telegram or other channels of what's going on, they've got to be, or at least hearing from people on the ground, they've got to start realizing things are screwed. And then it's a temporary price rise and all that. They've heard this before. They heard this before when they believed Trump's tariffs crap. Oh yeah, we're gonna make those evil Chinese or Indian or whomever manufacturers pay for this. And why are they evil? Because they're manufacturing to your company's contracts. And that's one. Two, of course, they're not going to pay for it. It's going to be the end consumer who pays for it. But people bought into this because people have absolutely no economic education in the U.S. for the most part. They probably we know that 50% of people can't even spell economics. It sounds funny, but it's the reality. When you've got partial to total illiteracy rate of 53% in the U.S. of adults. Not little children, preschool children. This is adults. So, and when they're figuring out, yeah, we've lost. That's a pretty bad indicator for the president there. But again, take it for what it's worth. 70, 80, 90%. The fact is his little blockade only works as long as Iran is not actively trying to sink his ships. Then they gotta leave that blockade and run for cover. And run for cover in their case is the deep Indian Ocean. They get at least about 1,000+ kilometers away from Iran. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Actually, today Iran hit one of these cargo ships close to off the coast of Qatar. And the war is going on with the case of the blockade. The two sides are fighting each other. But I think the key point right now is what Israel is thinking about. Netanyahu had an interview on 60 Minutes in which he said that the war is not over and they have to continue this war as long as Iran has that more than 60% enriched uranium. He wants that out of Iran in the hand of maybe United States. But Israel, looking at Stas, what has happened with the case of Israel, putting all these fronts that Israel is arguing all together, when it comes to Gaza, when it comes to Lebanon, when it comes to Yemen, Iran, they were fighting on all these fronts. And I even don't mention, the case of Syria, because I think that one is a serious one as well. But in Gaza, since day one, they were talking about disarming Hamas. What has happened so far? Did they achieve that?
Partially at the cost of 500,000 people's lives. They've partially disarmed Hamas by basically killing a large chunk of Hamas, but Hamas is still in the field. The problem with killing a big chunk of Hamas by murdering 500,000 people is a very large chunk of those survivors have now become the new generation of Hamas. They may have hated Hamas. They may have been to one of the other bands. They may have been Hamas, or the majority of the population wasn't in any of this. But, you kill somebody's kids, and they have a tendency to really want to split your head open for that. Go figure. And when the Israelis just do mass casualties, the Israelis don't, and the Americans for that matter too, if we're going to talk reality, at least for the aviation services, it's not collateral damage; it's extra bonus points. That's how they're looking at this. There's no collateral damage there. It's meant, when you say there's a guy under one of these buildings, maybe not. So let's level the building. That's a 10-story apartment building. We'll kill a couple hundred people. you hear. I mean, look at their actions. You know them for what the fruits. They're the trees for the fruits they bear, and it's a bitter fruit. And these are evil people with large explosives at their fingertips. I mean, these people are evil. They may try. They may not be full sociopaths because sociopaths don't really give a damn. Or they may fiend some kind of sorrow just for public consumption. But these people, they may be trying to rationalize. That's what evil people who aren't quite sociopaths do. Try to rationalize. Well, yeah, they were evil. They were going to get us, so we got to kill all of them. That kind of mentality. But this is what you're dealing with. Look, Netanyahu's the owner of America. So to the American audience, just live with it. You're owned. There's only one state in America. It's called Israel. The rest of you are. By the way, if anybody ever wants to understand where you stand with these people, you don't have to go very far. Go on YouTube, type in the Jewish soul, and then you get a lot of these Zionist rabbis in English that will tell you there's five parts to the human soul, and only Jews, well, for sure Zionist Jews, have the full soul. Five parts. Animals have two parts, and the rest of humanity, you have three parts. So you're just basically you're a up jumped monkey, and we're full human beings. So this is the type of people you're dealing with. It's racial supremacists. Um, what can you say? They're just killing up junk monkeys. They're not dealing with real human beings in their mind. So like it or not, but that's the type of mentality you're dealing with. If that's not National Socialist Workers Party Nazi, they of course had an economic plan, all that, but they were also based on a racial superiority. So that racial superiority, just because somebody today was the victim of it, doesn't mean they can't tomorrow be the perpetrator of it. All you got to do is have at least two ethnicities. One that's the superior, the Ubermensch, and one that's the Untermensch. And we see the same thing. I mean, people that say they're fully human because they have a full soul, and you're just got a soul of a up jumped monkey. Okay, that's what they think of you, and they don't hide it. I mean, they say it with great fanfare. There's a bunch of these videos out there, and they discuss it and so on and so on, and in, extreme detail of how they have the doma, which is the portion of the soul where God rests, and you have this rational part that just thinks and calculates the value of something, so they can always buy you. You can't, your soul's incapable of self-sacrifice and these higher emotions, but they are. And they'll tell you that flat out. I mean, once you understand your opponents who you're dealing with, you understand to them, blowing up a city full of women and children, they're just junk monkeys. They're not real human beings. It's a horrible concept, but you got to understand who you're dealing with and their mentality, and that's their mentality. They'll tell you straight up, just like they post videos of what they do. So like it or not, but that's who you're dealing with. I'm not saying all Jews are like that, but the people in these Zionists, absolutely, that's what they are, and they believe it.
Yeah. But the case of Lebanon is different, by the way. They're getting hit by these FPV drones right and left, and they have a lot of problems
Yeah.
right now.
On the ground, yes. Now those villages that they were able to get into, they've wiped them out. I mean, there's not a building left standing. They are also bombing, and they have been bombing Tyre, which is a city that's been around there for what, 4 to 5 thousand years. That city was there before the Hebrews came to the Promised Land. If we're going to go down that road, then they've been bombing Beirut, and the difference here is, unlike previous times. Previous times, the Israelis, Lebanon is divided between, broadly speaking, between three groups: Shia, Sunni, and Christians. They're further divided in that because there's different sects of Shia, there's different sects of Sunni, and there's different sects of Christianity at work there. But broadly speaking, those are three groups. And what the Israelis used to do is they wouldn't touch the Sunnis. They would ally themselves one with the other with the Christians and then go after the Shia. That's how they played it. Right now, they're not playing that. They're just palming everybody. So we've come to a different point where before they made incursions and they left. Now this is a different game. They flat out tell you, members of Knesset will flat out tell you, we're going to exterminate anything that doesn't leave, that doesn't get if we can't ethnically cleanse it, we'll just exterminate it and we're going to wipe everything out and build our own. And when Apple, for all those with iPhones, when Apple Maps removed every single Lebanese village south of Tyre, as if they never existed. That's, by the way, that's what you're supporting by buying Apple. So, you want to do something, start boycotting Apple because they obviously support the genocide that the Israeli government is doing.
Yeah. When it comes to Donald Trump's visit to China, I would assume that besides talking about the case of, relationship between the United States and China, he's gonna talk about both Ukraine and Iran with Xi. And what does he want and what is he gonna get from Xi Jinping, in your opinion?
World domination? Well, that's what he wants. He's not gonna get that. Next best thing, if not world domination, China buys all the agriculture products they used to buy from the U.S. and they're now buying from Russia, from Brazil, and other countries, and gives America all the rare earth rare earth magnets. Again, all these 17 different rare earths, when they're in their pure form, they're all magnetic. They're all highly magnetic. I mean, you use them for different things, but they're all highly magnetic. U.S. Is building, I think, its first plant with very limited capacity for only certain. And you have a different way of getting it out of all of these. It's usually electrolysis, chemical bleaching, and so on. But it's a somewhat different process for each one of those 17 elements. So it's very expensive. The U.S. is just starting to try to build something that. On some small industrial scale. So, Trump got promises from the military industrial sector to triple production of missiles, which is still pretty hilarious because that means if they triple PAC-3, if they triple the production of PAC-3 Patriot missiles, that means they'll go up from about 60, sometimes a little less than 60, to about 180. So they'll be able to cover from 30 targets, they'll now be able to cover a whole 90 targets, which wouldn't cover one day in Ukraine. So, that's the level of America. The only little problem is, A, they're all handmade, so there's not exactly a factory line slapping them out. B, you'd have to expand physically. Oh, and C, you don't have the magnets, so you can't put the radar and the guidance systems in there. Whoops. So Trump's screwed. His entire weapon system production is now basically ground to a halt. I guess they really will be pulling chips and processors out of washing machines, or not washing machines in this case, anything with a display screen and radar systems. So maybe those iPhones and the Teslas, how much of a magnet is in there? But I mean, we laugh about it, but this is the reality of what they're in, and they've known about it. This is the interesting thing. They've known they have this issue. And they're either too incompetent, too inept, or too crooked to take care of their own issues and start building these manufacturing plants years ago. So now they're in a position where it'll take, depending on the size of the plant, it could take 3, 4, 5 years. That means China's got them by the willies. And squeezing hard, no more weapons for you. You remember what was the name of that show that was it was in New York, the show about nothing. It was a comedy show. Well, they had a skit in there where they had a guy, they does Soup Nazi, which is actually a real person, by the way. They just copied a real person. They had this super soup and everybody's lining up to get his soup. And if you didn't like the way you looked or you didn't order it fast enough, no more soup for you, no more soup for you. So this is China, no more magnets for you, no more magnets for you.
Yeah.
And the U.S. has been trying to buy up these magnets in every which way they can. They went to Samsung, they went to other companies, says these
Seinfeld?
magnets. Seinfeld, that's it. Seinfeld, yeah, the soup Nazi, who, by the way, was a real person, and he actually did a line of soups, but there's like massively expensive soups, gourmet soups. I don't know if he's still doing it or not, but he got famous off that show. But anyways, that's so the U.S. tried to buy up all these magnets. They went to Samsung, they went to other companies. Said, since you're buying these magnets for electronics, triple your orders. And Samsung said, hell no, because the Chinese already told them that you up your orders radically, you're going to show us where those orders are going. And then if you can't show us the electronics, the civilian electronics going in, you're screwed next because we won't sell you anymore. So they all said no. They may have sold something, little amounts, but not what the CIA was trying to get from them for the Department of Defense or the Department of War. So yeah, they're screwed. They've been trying. I mean, don't get me wrong; they're not sitting idle. But you realize you're starving when the refrigerator's empty. Yeah, and you still got to make and you still got to go get food, and there's no food in the field. That's a little late. You should, normally you'd start doing some prior planning. Well, the U.S. didn't do that. And the funny part, even with the manufacture of Patriot missiles, they figured out they didn't have enough Patriots 3 years ago with Ukraine as an issue, and still they didn't take any moves to actually build anything because the Lockheed Martin, no Raytheon, I'm sorry, Raytheon makes a Patriot. They told them, well, we don't have the money to put in for a new manufacturing plant, which is like $10 billion. And the U.S. government could have actually. I mean, when you got a budget of $1 trillion, what's $10 billion at 1% of your budget? They could have taken that out and put it in there, but they didn't for whatever other reasons. So they've come to the point where they don't know what the hell to do now. I mean, they can make all kinds of promises on paper, but delivery, that's what you need, and they can't do delivery. So, whoops.
Do you think that we know that Donald Trump was forcing some of these car manufacturers to produce ammunition, to produce missiles for them? Do you think that's a long-term strategy, or they're going to get something in a short term?
Well, I mean, again, one, you're going to need the difference between Trump's or America's patriots, besides quality and range and actually being able to hit something, and Russia's S-300 and S-400 missile systems, is the Russian military-industrial complex. Their number one job is not to make a profit. Their number one job is to make equipment that works for the military. Then part of that equipment, additional sales, once they've proven themselves, gets sold off on the world market. The government isn't the profit center for them. In the United States, the government is the profit center, number one profit center. So their job isn't to make stuff that works. Their job is to make stuff that earns them money. And by the way, if it needs lots of spare parts and lots of repairs and lots of upgrades, that's more revenue streams. That's the reality of it. So the difference here is it's also in a matter of the way I've got to run 2 minutes. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can you pause it for 2 minutes?
Yeah, no, we are on live, but I'm gonna go.
Live. I'll be right back. I'm sorry. I'll be right back.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, let me just. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I was talking, Stas. I was talking about what we've learned from Iran, because they said this time around the United States gonna see different weapons and the new attitude on the part of Iranians to go against American and Israeli attack.
Mhm.
I don't know when it comes to these new weapons. They're talking about basically about air defense systems, or they're talking about new missiles being used or drones being used against Israel.
Well, a lot of the air defense system was never used. It was husbanded. We've seen some new systems. Russia has lingering munitions that We saw from the very beginning that hang around, they wait till somebody lays as a target for them or a drone finds a target. And those targets happen to be ground targets. Iran came up with loitering munitions that were anti air and they're infrared based. So instead of putting a radar signature onto something, they're zooming in on the exhaust. So it doesn't matter if it doesn't have a radar cross section because it's stealth, it still has an exhaust. And it's got an AI system in there that separates that from flares that are being shot so it can stay on target. And it just loiters around until it runs out of fuel and falls, or finds a target and takes it out. So there's no radar there to give warning that you've been painted. There's no launch warning because it's already in the air. Now, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see uh, newer yet drones, newer yet missiles in both air defense. Well, the newest air defense they have is the S-400s and the upgraded S-300s, which we haven't seen yet. U.S. screens are all destroyed everything, but those systems have not switched on. I think what those systems are waiting for is what's going to have to be by the U.S. if it wants to actually do a shooting war. The U.S. is critically low on Tomahawks. JSAMs are also low. JDAMs are plenty, but what's the maximum range on the JDAM ER? 85 kilometers.
Hmm.
That's it. And you have to
Yeah.
get high enough up there. The 1,500 kits, Trump didn't sell bombs. He sold kits. They get put on old gravity bombs. Ukraine, in this case, has plenty of them. You sold them 1,500 of these kits. So you have a glider kit, you have a navigation kit, and if they're extended range, you usually have a little jet engine on the back that shoots them out further. Well, again, for Ukrainians, they still have to use MiG 20, the old MiG 20 was it sevens, and they have to use the F-16s, but they have to be at maximum altitude for that to get the maximum range. If they're flying treetop level, it doesn't go very far. Now, does it? It doesn't have much to glide. So the problem is in Iraq. I mean, I'm sorry, in Ukraine. Is the same thing that's going to happen when they come at Iran. The higher you are, the easier you are to spot on radar. Right? Planes fly napa the earth or just above the tree lines. In other words, to keep underneath the radar signature. I mean, underneath the radar range. So the higher you go to maximize the range for these gliding bombs, the easier you are to pick up. And if you want to hit something like Tehran, you have to get pretty far inside of, for obvious reasons, pretty far inside of Iran. And we haven't really seen that. They've flown maybe 100 kilometers, 200 kilometers max inside of Iran. And that fast, shoot something and get the hell out as fast as you can so they don't get shot down. Now, if they're going to have to start going out deeper and deeper to drop these JDAMs, that's going to be a big problem for the Americans. And I think that's what the S-400 system switches on. You see a B-52 or a B-2 bomber going down, that's going to be a big friggin' deal. So those haven't come that far in for obvious reasons. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, honestly speaking, they can't do a long fight. A, B, that blockade disappears the moment things really start shooting because those ships will get sunk. And the reports out there are two American destroyers got hit or burning out of three. Again, were they not? I don't know. I think that there's full possibility they were. Iran's got tons of cruise missiles with a range of 500 kilometers. So they would have to run decently far before they were out of range of these things. Because they're fired from inside of Iran. So, I mean, if they're fired 100 kilometers inside of Iran, they still have a 400-kilometer range before they crash from lack of fuel. So, how far did these destroyers run? If these destroyers were in the Gulf of Hormuz, then they're screwed no matter what. You don't even need cruise missiles, or you could use them. So I don't know. I believe there probably were damaged, at least one of them. Statistically speaking, yeah, it's more likely happened. We won't find out unless somebody takes photos at a port, whatever port it goes into, for at least resupply, if not repair. or somebody else, releases images. But that's the reality of it. So I think there's Iran has a lot of updated drones, especially with Russia updated the old Shahed drones to the Garan 2, Garan 3, and then shipped them back, these models and parts back to Iran. And Iran hasn't really used them yet for the most part. So they're there. They've been using up their older stocks. They started using newer missiles that were no longer the 20-year-old or the 15-year-old missiles or the 10-year-old missiles now. But it still has a lot of new stock, and they're building drones. And that's one of the things the Americans suddenly is clued up to again. Oh, there's 4 Caspian ports, and they're busy around the clock. Russia shipped in 2 million tons of wheat to make sure Iran doesn't starve. Russia's moved in a lot of diesel. Iran was always importing diesel out of Russia. Iran has oil, but it doesn't have enough refining capability. And now the U.S. has damaged the refining capability even more, so it's much lower than it was. So the country doesn't run out of fuel. Russia's bringing in a lot of fuel, which, by the way, is also countering in the other direction. Iran can send oil and then pump it into the Russian system for sale somewhere. So there's that. And Russia's sending a lot of drone parts. Tube can play proxy while we're at it. So the U.S. has got a problem. I don't know how they're going to solve that. The best thing they could do is keep this blockade of the blockade on and let it peter out over a couple of weeks, and then just go make up some. Trump can get on an aircraft carrier. The Gerald Shetford, when it comes in there and they clean up the sewage off of it, get on there and say mission accomplished. And his the base that's left, the groupies, they'll believe anything he says. They'll fawn over it. Everybody else, it doesn't matter what he says. Everybody knows the truth that the U.S. does not one. But he's got the problem with a donor class. I don't know how you get out of that, especially with the elections coming up. The donor owner class that's tied directly to Israel. So, but I think more than likely they still don't believe Iran. They're still thinking it's a bluff. Just like they thought that Straits of Hormuz was going to be a bluff. Just like they thought that Iran hitting American base was a bluff. Because what's a bluff? It's a lie. A bluff is a lie. It's a strategically placed lie. So Washington lies constantly. They figure everybody else lies constantly. So when somebody makes a real threat and tells them, "Yeah, I'm going to take my right leg, and put it upside your left ear," they don't believe that. We lie all the time. So you've got to lie all the time. We're all, it's projection. If we constantly lie, everybody else constantly lies, and then they're shocked when it turns out Iran told them the truth, and I don't know what to do. I mean, they've got no strategy.
And it seems that Iran has reached or has, achieved some sort of methodology or some sort of way to saturate the air defense system of these destroyers in the Strait of Hormuz or close in the Persian Gulf, in the Arabian Sea. And they somehow saturate the air defense system, then they hit the destroyer, and right now they've been showing the United States that they can sink them easily.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the next phase of this blockade. If they continue with these escalations, we're going to see these destroyers being sunk in the Persian Gulf or maybe in the Arabian Sea. I don't know what.
If they're in the Persian Gulf, they're dead. I mean, there's no place to run, and there's no port they can come in to repair or refuel. They're absolutely screwed.
I remember when the war started, they said about something like 15 destroyers being in the region, and
I think the majority of those destroyers were actually escorts for the carriers.
Mm.
So, it's those destroyers have they have SA-3s, which are an anti-aircraft system, missile system, and they have Phalanx, which is an autocannon system. That's the Phalanx is a point defense system. It's used close up, and this is your last line. The missiles are 2, 3, 4, 500 meters incoming, and the phalanx systems are shooting just the autocannons. With a belt fed autocannon with multi barrels just spinning and shooting, trying desperately to take the missile out as it comes into its final trajectory. And again, with these systems, like everything else, you know, you overwhelm it. Now, the gates of the Straits of Hormuz, it's while these destroyers are not their keel isn't that deep and they can go anywhere in the straits, as opposed to the big tankers that are very limited in where they can go. They can only go in the main canals. I think that the very main canal is about 2,700 meters wide. It's a little over 2.5 kilometers wide. It's been dredged to allow the super tankers through, because they'll get beached in other areas. The destroyers, they can go, as far as I know, they can go in all these other areas. But the problem is anywhere in the Straits of Hormuz, which at its, I think at its maximum distance is 32 kilometers. It's not a big area. Iran doesn't need super high tech technology. If they can just overpower them with drones, FPV drones, with RPG rounds on them, and just the Garan type drones or Shahed drones, and short range missiles, surface to water missiles, that from the mountains. And just if you don't do that, just bring in drones. I mean, imagine 50, 60, 70 FPV drones flying in.
Hmm.
That's chaos. Those they're at least a third of them are going to get through, because those phalanx systems are not going to be able to cover all of it, and they're coming from every direction, up, down, above the water line, above the mast line, in between, left, right. I mean, just a swarm of them coming in. It's a nightmare scenario, and you can't outrun them, and you can't go to the deep sea because you're in the straits. That's it. So the technology's there. I don't know what you said. If the U.S. actually, it's a big question whether or not those two destroyers went into the Persian Gulf. Sometimes the U.S. says yes, sometimes Iran says yes, sometimes they say no. It's a very uh, foggy, cloudy, sketchy issue on what the hell's going on in the Straits of Hormuz for real. But it's nothing good. At least not for the U.S. Let me rephrase it. It's nothing good.
Yeah. How many destroyers, how many aircraft carriers do they have? It seems there are three right now. Yeah, is that the
Yeah.
case?
I mean, all in all, the U.S. fleet, if I remember correctly, has 11, and the rest are in port getting repaired. And then the Gerald Ford's going to be out, I think, for a while, and they pulled it back. But even if it didn't have a 30-hour fire, which I believe was a missile strike, and if it didn't have the clogged toilets, you got to figure, its crew's been at sea for 11 months. And there's unless they do needs of the military and just block people from leaving the military, I think a lot of people are going to resign. They're going to lose a lot of people, especially off the Gerald Ford after 11 months being out. And we saw what the rations are. I mean, Jesus, they're starvation level rations. They've got a lot of issues. So yeah, three right now, but okay, they had two, and then they got three, and the difference is they still can't come in close enough to do any real damage without getting shot up. Uh, the only way they can do that with the planes is by refueling them in midair, and it's a long flight. You're not going to get very many sorties. It's very tiresome on the crew. It's very tiresome on the plane. Planes will start breaking, and those refuelers are easy targets. So
Mm.
you know, people people in the know for a long time been saying the aircraft carrier is dead. Oh, it's great if you want to come up there and beat up on some small nation like the Ivory Coast or something like that they can't shoot back at you. But the moment you get to a regional power, you can't do jack to a regional power. I mean, let alone to a superpower like Russia or China. You get to a regional power like Iran, and Iran just can smack those aircraft carriers out of the water. So, how long before those technologies start spreading to other nations?
Mm,
It's again, as a major military asset, the aircraft carrier is dead. They
mm,
may come in modified forms with drone carriers, something much smaller with a very small minimal crew. Yeah, I could see it in that form. But in the modern form that it's taken, it's just supersized the World War II version. It's dead. It's shown itself to be dead. It's extremely expensive. It's extremely big. It's extremely expensive. It eats a lot of resources, and it can't do shit. Pardon my French. It can't do anything against any modern regional power.
yeah.
And against Russia, I mean, Russia with Kinjal missiles, it's not even 1,000 kilometers it can't come in. And Russia can deny it anywhere near within 2,000 kilometers. The submarines and everything else that it has. Aircraft carriers are actually pointless.
Yeah. Here is what Donald Trump said moments ago about the Iranian response. Stas, he said, I have just read the response from Iran's so called representatives. I don't like it. Totally unacceptable. And thank you for your attention for this. It's just amazing. Let me just read what was the Iranian response based on Tasnim News, is a semi-official Iranian outlet. Is that Iran response was this: immediate end to the war on all fronts with strong guarantees against future attacks on Iran, lifting of all sanctions on Iran, including Iran's oil exports market, ending the US naval blockade, release all frozen assets belonging to Iran, Iran's right to manage the Strait of Hormuz. These are the points.
Well, let's go down those points real quick. First of all, let's just start with Iran's right to manage Strait Hormuz. That shouldn't even be a point.
No,
It's private property.
no,
It is not international waters. It's
no.
private property. Iran can do with it as it pleases. You don't like it, build pipelines around it. Or go, pretty please, can I do whatever I can to get through it? It's like somebody comes under your yard. You don't like the fact they can't come under your yard, go around it. If you can't go around it, go dig a new strait across the desert. I don't know. Yeah, they could actually dig canals across the desert if they really wanted to. But that's the point, though. It's private property. Now, having said that, um, part of that demand is absolutely unrealistic, and I'll tell you simply why. Because there's nothing Trump can do about it. Lifting of all sanctions. Well, the maximum Trump can do on the sanctions regime is to give a waiver to sanctions, which doesn't mean that the next president up isn't going to take away that waiver. The problem with any sanctions, here's the problem with sanctions. They're really easy to lay on, they're next to impossible to get rid of. Because who gets rid of sanctions? The US Congress. And when 80% of your Congress is firmly in Israel's pocket, they do as Israel demands and what's good for Israel, not for the American serfs and tax slaves. So that's unrealistic. It's never going to happen. And the first one about guarantees.
Guarantees immediate end to the war on all fronts with strong guarantees against future attacks on Iran.
What guarantees? This is the U.S. you're dealing with. What guarantees has the U.S. not broken as soon as it became?
Yeah.
It's the same thing as with the British.
I think
You know,
they're trolling the United States. I think this
I hope
shows that
they're trolling. Yeah.
I literally feel this way. I don't see any of these people believing in, that the United States can provide them with these sort of points that they're asking for. That's why they're asking for, because they don't see any sort of agreement between Iran and the United States happening. The whole point is this, in my opinion.
Yeah, because in the summer, the people that were trying to negotiate, they really did believe in the U.S. for whatever damn reason. And we saw what that brought. But yeah, there's, what guarantees can the U.S. give? What guarantees has the U.S. not broken?
Yeah.
There was a saying about the British, and it applies to the U.S. Just as much, to the U.S. Elites. Um, the only thing worse than being the enemy of the British Empire was being its ally. At least the enemy knew who was standing against them. Because the moment you're no longer, profitable to keep as an ally, they're the first ones that'll put a knife in your ribs. Here's a dagger. Have some steel. Throw you under the bus, as the Americans like to say now. That's the reality of it. There's nothing. First of all, who would even trust Washington? Period.
But by the way, there is no negotiations, Stas. What
Of course
is
there are.
that
Trump
negotiation?
tells us there's negotiations all the time.
Who's going to negotiate on these points?
Trump's negotiating with himself, and I. Me, myself, and I. There's a 3-team negotiation team right there. Yeah, he's looking in a mirror and negotiating. I like those negotiations. Best negotiation we've had yet.
I on Tuesday I was talking with Colonel Wilkerson. He said that maybe Iranian IRGC occupied some parts of Trump's brain and they're negotiating with him.
AI, yeah, they got a chip in there. Trump swallowed a chip once, and now they're talking. There's actually technologies that, well, I know it's been experimented on. I don't know if they've been fielded. So some people believe they have. That can actually project a voice into somebody's head. It's sound waves, and your ears, I guess, are picking it up like it's inside your head. So maybe. maybe the Iranians or somebody else on the other side is beaming voices into the Oval Office in the Trump's head. I don't know. I think personally they're already there before that. So
it's just
and you're right. There is no negotiations, no real negotiations. No. But look, last negotiations you had what? We saw what we had with the two shysters. That show up everywhere to have about as much negotiation skill as I am a master in quantum physics. Actually, I probably know a lot more about quantum physics than I know about negotiations. I did study, I did take some engineering course in physics. The two real estate, the two apartment flippers from New York, and then who are absolute assets of Netanyahu. And then, I don't hold it against Vance that he had to call Trump. Look, at the end of the day, Trump is his boss.
Yeah.
I hold it against Vance that he had to call Netanyahu and get marching orders from that guy. And then Netanyahu just shames them, ridicules them, how he was telling them what to do and all that. It's like the crap you take from that jackass and the pissant small nation that's smaller than it's about the size of Los Angeles for population wise. Yeah, cut your 300 million people and you're taking orders from these guys. You have no pride. You have no backbone. This is ridiculous. I mean, it just gets ludicrous when you're looking at it. But yeah, I mean, how can you negotiate? Might as well call Netanyahu. I mean, honestly.
Stas, when it comes to Iran, we literally, because I talk with Iranians, and we know what's going on. There is no negotiations going on. But with the case of Russia, it's the same way, in my opinion. It's so strange the way that Donald Trump is, somehow negotiating, talking with other governments. Basically, they're not negotiating with the foreign minister of Russia, with Lavrov. They're talking with Kirill Dmitriev. And these two guys, the same guys who are, by the way, negotiating with Iran, they're negotiating with Russia. And how far is that going to go with the case of Russia? And how do they find it in Russia?
Well, we've had about the same results. I mean, conflict, at maximum, they got a ceasefire. I guess Trump can take that to the bank. I made him take a ceasefire. When in reality, Russia had already declared a ceasefire. I don't believe in these ceasefires. Honestly speaking, they're pointless. Why they're pointless? Because either the other side is shooting anyway, so it's not a ceasefire because they're still getting shot back at in defense, or they're just using that time to prepare for an offensive or to maneuver or whatever. It's not like they just sit down and wait for it and relax for 2 days. So I don't, honestly, from a military point of view, I don't see any reason for a ceasefire. You do the ceasefire when the enemy surrenders, then they get a full ceasefire, and only then. Other than that, you just continue exterminating them to the very end. That's as a military person, that's it. That's my approach to a ceasefire. Now, having said that, um, I mean, outside of this ceasefire, and we'll see if it holds tomorrow. Tomorrow's the last day on it. What do we got out of it? Trump's negotiations. Like I say, he just sold 1,500 JDAM kits, JDAM extended range kits. The U.S. is still supplying weapons. The U.S. is still supplying intelligence. The U.S. is still supplying money. And, if Trump says, "Oh, we're selling it," whatever you want to call it, selling it for to NATO that will someday pay you back. You so nothing's changed. Nothing's really changed. This war is just going on. I mean, in the end of the day, because you have a leadership in Ukraine that just does not give a damn about how many Ukrainians are left alive. Actually, it does. Because if there's enough of them left alive, that means that they didn't earn all the money they could have earned off their corpses. I mean, this is a country, let's not forget, this is a country that earned about $4 billion in tax revenue from organ sales or organ exports. Organs come from live people, not dead people. Dead people don't give you organs. Dead people become dead people after you take the organs out of them. Let's just remember that. So, I mean, this is the type of government we're dealing with. The only way this ends is on the battlefield. And me personally, if people say, "Oh, why blow up Zelensky or others?" You can leave Zelensky if you want. You take out everybody around him, and when the next guys come up, you take them out. When the next guys come up, you take them out. Because the difference between the power structure in Ukraine and Iran, Ukraine is not a civilizational state. Let's begin with that. And the power is about that thick in there. It's a couple layers of thieves, most of which are not willing to die. There's no ideology there. The only ideology is how much I can stuff my pockets and how many people I can sell into the meat grinder, stuff my pockets even more. That's it. That's the whole ideology. And then what makes it stable? Nothing makes it stable. The only reason it's stable is because we're not killing off these crooks. These crooks aren't going to die for Ukraine. For God's sakes, Ukraine is a feeding trough for these pigs. That's it. They'll shite all over and they'll leave. So either they run away now or they die. That's the only way to keep Ukraine from quite literally fighting to the last child.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as far as and there is an ideology, of course, there are Nazis, particularly Western Ukraine, but they're not in power, by the way, and they should be wiped out anyways too, because they're the people, unless they change their mentality, they're the people that are no better than the Salafist Islamists. They get off on murdering people and they get off on doing atrocities. You can't talk with people like that. Those are criminal animals that have rabid. People that get off on murdering women and children. That's it. There's a line you've crossed that there's no coming back from, as far as I'm concerned, anyways. So but the point is until you start taking out the leadership around Ukraine, so that the next guy comes up and goes, "Well, I don't want to be here. I'm going to get killed like the other two, and I don't. And the system's here only so I can steal as much money as I can. Okay, I'll call it quits now." That's the difference between Ukraine and Iran. Iran, the people aren't there to get rich. They're there to serve their country. And if I die, the next guy's going to come up and he's going to take my place to serve his country until he gets killed. And the next guy, and the next guy. And it's a deep ideology in there that, we're fighting for our motherland and we're going to defend it. That there's nothing of that in Ukraine, just like there was nothing of that in Saddam's Iraq. That's why it fell as fast as it fell when it did fall. That's why generals were able to be bought off the way they were able to. The same thing on, fortune and unfortunate, however you want to look at it, but the same thing that happened to Maduro. His vice president sold him out.
Yeah.
I mean, that tells you there is no real ideology there. There's no real nationalism there either. That says, we're willing to give our lives for our country and its future. When you're willing to sell out your boss that fast to grab power, and that's the thing that matters most.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Stas, for being with us today. Great pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
As always.
Sorry about that little break.
No problem at all.
beyond my control.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
No problem. And see you soon.
Yep. See you.